by the Soviet press in preparation for the 19th National Party Conference was a profoundly democratic document. He explained his view by the fact that the platform had incorporated numerous positive suggestions put forward by people during preparations for the conference. The platform spelled out ideas aimed at renewing Soviet society. The document showed, Evgeny Ambartsumov pointed out, that a political compromise had not been concluded between supporters and opponents of the policy of restructuring. Restructuring, he said, had taken the upper hand and become an irreversible process. A member of the Political Bureau and Secretary of the Central Committee of the Soviet Communist Party, Yegor Ligachov, has completed his tour of the Kuybushев region. He visited industrial and farming facilities and talked to the workers. In the city of Tolyatti, Yegor Ligachov, in the capacity of a member of the National Parliament, received voters. He said there that restructuring was the only possibility to overcome economic stagnation and a powerful factor of accelerating the nation's economic and social development. Experts at the Baikonur Cosmodrome are completing pre-start tests of a booster rocket and the spaceship which will bring to the Mir orbital complex a Soviet-Bulgarian space crew. The crew is to be launched on Tuesday night, Moscow time. The main and the backup crews are using the training mock-ups to work out the succession of operations to carry out the docking with the Mir orbital complex and are discussing with experts the program of the forthcoming scientific studies. On Monday, a state commission will decide what crews to be launched into space. This expedition will be carried out with the 13th International Space Crew aboard Soviet spaceships. The first joint Soviet-American building enterprise has been set up in Moscow. The enterprise, involving the company Delphi International, will be called Perestroika. It will reconstruct historic buildings and build hotels and premises for foreign companies. Its profits will be used primarily for reconstructing the center of Moscow. It has become known that the large-scale accident at the Arzamas railway station in the Gorky region east of Moscow on Saturday followed the explosion of 3 freight cars with industrial explosives. The explosion destroyed some houses and damaged the station building and auxiliary premises. According to incomplete information, 68 people were killed and hundreds injured. All the injured have been given assistance. It remains to be established what sparked off the explosion. The Soviet youth paper Komsomolskaya Pravda has published the results of a poll carried out among young people on the issues of changes in Soviet society. Asked how democratization of public life affected them, 31% of those polled answered they'd started to feel more easy, but 23% still think it's not safe to criticize the activity of public organizations. 62% of the students said they considered the most important human features honor and dignity of the individual and diligence and civil courage. Sunday was the 90th birthday of Spanish poet and playwright Federico Garcia Lorca, who was killed in July in 1936 by Spanish fascists. His tragedy Mariana Pineda, his plays and collections of poems have a profound humanistic nature. The name of Garcia Lorca has become associated with the struggle for Spain's national culture. The ex-holder of the World Chess Crown, Anatoly Karpov of the Soviet Union, has won the European Blitz Championship in the Spanish city of Gijón. He came ahead of his 3 teammates, Tukmakov, Gavrikov, and Elvest. And now to end the news, here are the headlines once again. The Soviet Foreign Minister, Eduard Shevardnadze, is arriving in New York for the United Nations General Assembly's special session on disarmament. The official celebrations of the millennium of the introduction of Christianity in Russia have begun here in Moscow. And a 3-day strike of protest against American Secretary of State George Shultz's visit to the Middle East has ended in the Israeli-occupied Arab territories. And that's the end of the news, which came to you from the newsrooms of Radio Moscow.
Time now for Science and Engineering. Today, are meteorites a threat to spacemen? What is black lightning? And how do magnetic phenomena affect our health? The Soviet orbital research station Mir has now been operating in space for over 2 years. For most of this time, it's been manned. Its present crew, Vladimir Titov and Musa Manarov, have now been working aboard the space laboratory for more than 5 months. Their research program is highly varied. They've been doing experiments in materials processing, conducting biomedical research, studying distant galaxies, and surveying the territory of the Soviet Union for the needs of the economy. All this is work cosmonauts do traditionally in prolonged flight. But just recently, the crew of the Mir performed an interesting study of the meteor streams that from time to time pass through their home in space. Here is one of the Mir crew, Titov, speaking of this study from orbit.
История космонавтики знает много примеров тому, что станции...
There are now many cases on record in the history of manned spaceflight of spacecraft windows losing their transparency. The defects appearing at them are due either to ejecta from the station engines or else to the impact of micrometeorites. Just a few days ago, a new defect appeared in the window of a cabin on the left-hand side of the station. The defect is a fairly deep cavity with sharp edges on the right and left, each about 3 millimeters long. This is proof that we are continually bombarded by meteorites, although true, they are very small. By means of an original laser device, we investigated the surfaces of the station's windows to assess the damage caused by micrometeorites, and these data were telemetered to Earth.
So, how much of a danger are micrometeorites to the life of cosmonauts in space? Here's Boris Belitsky with the prevailing scientific wisdom on this point.
It's been estimated that if there were 10,000 stations in orbit at the same time, only one of them would statistically be in danger of colliding with a meteorite capable of piercing its shell. But smaller particles do strike the Mir station regularly. Their impact is registered by special sensors, and the treatment of these data provides scientists with information about the density of meteoric fluxes and their variation with time. For example, during 150 hours of flight, in which the station circles the Earth 100 times, the flux intensity can vary by an order of magnitude. That is, from units, the number of impacts can change to tens. The micrometeorites leave their mark on the station. They can erode the optical lenses of instruments and window panes, or the heat insulation of the station, or else the surfaces of the solar batteries. This affects such characteristics as the coefficients of transparency and heat absorption and reflection. There are also heavier wanderers in space, which could not just scratch the station's surface, but pierce its shell. But luckily, as was pointed out a moment ago, the likelihood of encountering them is small, about 1% a year.
And still, Boris, what if such an encounter does take place?
Well, the station does have a protective screen. Besides this, there's an automatic system of emergency pressurization. This means that in the event of sudden